Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about building a trials team around the beam meta. And the reason why I'm going to talk about this is I feel like for the most part in most situations, the understanding around what the beam build has built into it is not really fully implemented across the entire team in order to maximize group efforts. There's a lot of things that are not necessary anymore, and you can build around bringing in other buffs and other sets to more increase damage across your team. So I'm going to show you a setup for an entire team that I have uh, conjured up that brings in unique setups that maybe are not fully used by other people, but these builds are all built to kind of complement each other and get the most performance out of each role with an easy to function build. So let's get right into it. As you can see, I've got 6 regular full damage DPS listed here with 2 support DPS, 2 healers, and 2 tanks. So the most of that is pretty generic, regular stuff, but the 2 support DPS is where the uniqueness comes in, along with some of the sets that I'm going to call out. So group overview. In a 12-player composition, there's some stuff that you want to make sure that you're addressing. Number one is the penetration cap. Um, the penetration cap for trials is 18,200. And so if you're running your 6 DPS or on the build of the that I did in the first video where you're running the Arcanist, Assassination, and Templar, even if you're really just doing the Arcanist and Velothi, pretty much is all you need to hit 7,000 penetration because there's so much penetration built into that alone. There's no penetration in the Templar line or the Assassination line. It's all coming from Herald of the Tome. So as simple as that. If you're using Herald of the Tome and Velothi, this team right here is built around just that. You don't need to handle penetration like you normally did by using Alkosh or something like that. Penetration is done with this setup, along with critical damage. Um, very easy to have at full staff. So, um, as I covered in the first video with the Arcanist build, beam build, I will link that video as well as the video I just recently did on a DPS guide. I will link that as well. But these 2 categories, penetration and critical damage cap, are 100% up at all times, virtually with no lag. And then group resistance for DPS is pretty much at 30,000, which is insanely high. All you need to do is bring Ozezan, Lord Warden, and a source of major resolve. It doesn't have to be this gear set. This is just a reference. If you don't want to run the Winter's Embrace skill line, there is a gear set in the game that will give your entire group major resolve. So that will give you some build freedom if you want to use other classes and you don't like the Winter's Embrace. This gear set right here comes from Frost Vault, and you can put this on your back bar and it will give you major resolve and your entire group major resolve. I did a video on this gear set. If you want to see that, I will put the link in the description as well. Sustain, I have my healers set up to run Kyne's Wind as well as Xoryn's. These 2 are really, really helpful. I'll get to into the detail of that stuff when I get into the specific builds here in a little bit. And then we're stacking weapon damage from unique sources. And then we've eliminated a Warhorn dependency in this build setup. Why is that an issue or something to even strive for? I cannot tell you how many times I have been in a trials group and you hear Warhorn and 2 seconds later Warhorn, or if they didn't call it out, you can just hear it. You can hear the horn go off and you think, okay, there's a wasted ultimate. It happens all the time. It's just too easy to double up your Warhorn. And so the other thing is if you're depending on major force to have a burst window, you only get that buff for 10 seconds. and it takes however long to gain major force again. So with that setup, you're going to be dipping in terms of critical damage whenever people get their ultimate up, use it, and whatnot. So in my setup, I have everybody running at 125% critical damage in the full DPS category, that is, at all times. You don't need to run Warhorn or any other. You don't have to worry about minor brittle up times. The 125% critical damage cap is met from the DPS having 114% critical damage on their build, and then you slap Lucent Echoes on your main tank, giving the rest of the way of 11% up gives you 125% critical damage. Then with that kind of freedom of freeing up some skill or some gear sets, you can throw in some extra buffs that maybe not always there, but are called out quite a bit. But now we can talk about bringing in percentage buffs like Zen's Redress and Martial Knowledge. Because these are percentage buffs, they are going to increase damage in a scaled way. So basically, if you've got a damage dealer that's really hitting hard, this 5% buff is really going to increase the damage a lot, as opposed to if they're just on something that's maybe hitting the 85,000 mark or so. If you're hitting at 110,000 and you add another 5% to that damage dealer, that's going to be a lot of damage. So when you start handling categories like penetration and critical damage on your DPS builds, that frees up your support to bring something else that can help empower your team even further. So we're going to get into the trash setup that I recommend for full damage beam DPS, and that's the one piece Zon to get the critical chance bonus from the one piece. Perfected Yandir's Might. Why is this in the set that I'm talking about? They are working on nerfing the damage done to monsters set that I would normally run on Sul in this spot. And so this is a pure weapon damage set that all you have to do is critically strike and then you get weapon damage for it. Even if you don't heavy attack to take advantage of the burst window bonus, this still gives you a considerable amount of damage to apply to your build. And then I also recommend running Deadly Strike for add pulls because this transitions to your entire toolkit. And as always, Velothi or Mythic to give you the extra penetration, the extra damage done to monsters, and the minor force. Now, why is this still being called awesome? Because I'm not dipping into the damage done with monsters with these two sets here. This is the only one in this build that's running the damage done to monsters. So I'm only dipping into that category once. So this should be a very powerful setup. And then we've got the crushing wall from the Maelstrom Arena on the back bar. This is going to increase DPS of the Wall of Elements by quite a bit. So then we're going to go for boss fight setups. The sets I recommend are Zons, again, for the one-piece critical chance. Very strong and important thing to run there. Then we have perfected Slivers of Null Arca. If you don't have the perfected version of this, you're still going to hit a decent amount. I believe it's just a weapon damage line that you lose. Maybe it was a critical chance. I don't remember offhand, but this right here is an absolute killer for single target. So when you're in boss fights, this is the one you want to use. Also, if you're parsing, this is what you want to use. This is a really, really good parsing set, and it's also good for boss fights. I recommend if you're wanting to run these two setups, the trash and the boss fight setup like this, then I would recommend using the Wizard's Wardrobe because that'll help you really switch out this stuff on the fly. Again, I've done videos on the Wizard's Wardrobe, several of them. I'll put my add-ons playlist in the description and you can find all the videos that I've done on the Wizard's Wardrobe there. So a couple of things to talk about for boss fights. Because they are talking about nerfing the damage done to monsters, we're not really sure what that's going to end up with at this point because they're still in the PTS cycle. And even if they say in the last week of PTS that it's going to be X, they still have the potential to come out with Y on the first week of live. I've seen it happen before where they don't keep what's in the fifth or the last week of PTS. They do some more changes last minute and then it goes live with something different. It does happen. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens with the damage done to monsters category. Tideborn may or may not lose some potency for boss fights. But if it does, a possible set to squeeze in may be the Claw of Forest Wraith. This gives you a ton of critical chance. And so that could be a possible set to look at. But another one that's really strong is Tzogvin's Warband from Frostvault. So that would be another one that could be possible to implement because that also has a line of penetration on it, which would help for losing out on this line of penetration. I would say if you're going to move from Tideborn to Claw of the Olnacrin, then probably a good idea would be to switch off the Zon and change it to a one-piece penetration such as Valken Scoria, and then that'll basically keep your penetration right where it was. You're just moving a line of crit chance from the headpiece down to here, and then you're moving it up to the headpiece. So keep that in mind. If you use Claw of Yolnacrin, or excuse me, Claw of Forest Wraith with Slivers, then make sure your headpiece is a penetration line monster set piece. So the benchmark is from the Arcanist, Templar, and Assassin skill line has this built into it. It's got roughly 6,000 weapon damage with 61% critical chance and a penetration of 7,200 with 114% critical damage. And so this is how you hit the critical damage cap in content very easily. All you have to do is add 11% here from Lucent Echoes and you're at the critical damage cap. And this highlights how you get to the 114. You've got Fighting Finesse tagged onto the base of 50. And then you've got 6 pieces of medium armor. Then you get a passive 10% critical damage from hemorrhage, or excuse me, yes, the hemorrhage passive from the Assassination Nightblade skill line. Piercing Spear gives you Templar, the Templar skill line gives you another 12%. All you have to do is slot an Adric Spear ability on your bar, and you will passively get this 12%. These are all passives that are on all the time. The only thing in this entire grid right here that shuts off in any way is this Fated Fortune passive right here. And this is super, super easy to keep up. All you have to do is generate or consume a crux every 7 seconds. Now, if you're in active combat, you're going to be doing that on an Arcanist. Super easy. This is just never going to drop off. You're either going to get a crux from Inspired Scholarship, or you're going to flail, and then you're going to consume by hitting your beam. So you've got this covered, and none of this minor force from Velothi is 100% uptime. So this is 100% passive, 100% passive, 100% passive, 100% passive. All of this is going to stay up at all times. The only thing that can possibly drop off is this 12% right here. Then you're at 102. So really, really simple. But now if you add the 11 to the 102, then you're at 113% critical damage. You flail, and then you're right there at the 125. So the most you're going to drop down to is from 125 down to 113 if you're running Lucent Echoes on your tank. then all you have to do is flail or beam, and you're right back up to the critical damage cap. So this is pretty much passively sitting at the full critical damage cap. So support DPS. This is something that I've kind of built together to kind of buff the beam damage builders or damage dealers as much as I can. And this is what I've come up with for the new update that they've done to the Dragonknight and the other classes that they're talking about having pure classes, and they're going to buff with class masteries. So what we're going to talk about is the gear setup here for trash that I recommend. Again, 1-piece critical chance with a Spaulder of Ruin. If you run 2 of these, you're going to give everybody in your group 260 weapon and spell damage. That's a unique weapon and spell damage buff. And then these 2 sets here are going to increase the damage that you're doing so that you're not kind of just a complete lump in the dirt. One thing that I would say that a caveat here is if your healer is not running Powerful Assault, then I recommend a support DPS run this. And the reason why, I've done a video on Powerful Assault in terms of keeping the uptime. This is not recommended to be run on a tank. The reason why, in most cases, when you're running around in a pug or just in a trial, you are never close enough to apply this buff to your group. It is a dead set to slot. You're not giving the buff. Your uptime sucks. You basically may as well run Rubedite. This is not a set that is got a high uptime on a tank unless you've got a tank that is got some calmness and focus that can understand where that 12-meter mark is that you can give the buff. A real good way to eyeball it is if you're wearing the Spaulder of Ruin, turn the ring on. That's got a 12-meter ring of aura. That's the exact restriction that Powerful Assault has. And you can just kind of eyeball and say, okay, how often do people get outside of that ring? A lot, a little, whatever, you can judge for yourself whether or not you want to have a tank run Powerful Assault. I would highly recommend that you put it on either a healer or a support DPS, and then they're in group. In most cases, DPS run in a herd, so they're going to give this buff out. Healers are also really close. They're going to give this buff out. On a tank, they're running around yanking shit in, taunting, blocking. Let's not give them another bicycle to run on. So first, support DPS for boss fights. I'm going to implement a full Dragonknight on this. And there are several reasons why, and I'm going to go into it right now. This is going to be my War Machine Zen build. So this build is going to increase damage to your group absolutely massively. And we're going to go into it right now. Spaulder of Ruin gives you 260 weapon and spell damage. Zen's Redress, when you have this maximized, will increase damage taken by 5%. Very easy to keep uptime on a Dragonknight. Always has been, always will be. And so the new rework that they have done with the Dragonknight, these bottom 3 right here, are the main reason why this has become such a massive, absolutely huge setup to use in your trials groups. These 2 lines right here are from the class mastery. You have to be a pure Dragonknight to take advantage of these, and then they reworked the Standard of Might as well. So, DK damage over time abilities, the Wildfire, this is going to increase the damage of this support DPS so that they're not, again, just a lump in the dirt. They're actually able to do some damage. We're going to be applying dots to proc the Zen's Redress set anyway. So this is really going to help increase dot damage a lot. All we've got to do is keep the skills here going, and then we're going to get a lot of damage increase. So the next one, and this is a massive one, lead from the front. This DK passive synergizes with War Machine like you wouldn't believe. So if you don't know what War Machine is, let's just imagine you've got a Dragonknight in your group that's got 500 ultimate. They're going to give themselves and 5 group members that are close 50 seconds. That's 50 seconds of Major Slayer. And you might be saying, well, that's the same buff that Rojo gives. I understand that. What I'm doing is I'm taking that setup away from that healer and I'm going to set him up with something different, and we'll get there in a minute. The reason why is because Rojo is a very hectic set to run. If you're experienced enough to run it, then great. You can apply it. Uptime's awesome. However, even if you're hitting your marks every time, you're still going to have some downtime where you don't have Major Slayer up. This right here is going to give your group 50 seconds of Major Slayer. That's in a lot of cases longer than your boss fight is. So this right here is going to nuke the boss when you give 5 of your damage dealers Major Slayer for 50 seconds. Okay? Now on top of that 50 seconds, we're going to kick in lead from the front class mastery. What is that going to do? This applies Major Berserk and Major Protection to your group members within 28 meters for 1 second for every ultimate, or excuse me, every 15 ultimate that you spend. So this same 500 ult that's giving 50 seconds of Major Slayer, you're also going to give Major Berserk and Major Protection for 33 seconds. That is a total of 20% flat damage increase, as well as Major Protection to give your group defense of 10% damage reduction for an entire 33 seconds. So the next thing that I'm going to say is, if we're hitting our ultimate with the standard of might at 500, then everybody who's standing in the area is going to get 300 weapon and spell damage and another reduced damage taken for 15 seconds. So the caster gets an additional 15% damage and an additional 15% reduction in damage while in the area. At 500 ultimate, this activates so much with just one person saving their ultimate for a boss fight. A massive amount of buff right here, just absolutely packed into one DPS that's support. Okay, now the second one, we're going to talk about the Templar mono class is what they call it. I just call it pure blood. So Zans with Spaulder of Ruin again, because this only affects 6 players. We want to make sure everybody gets this buff that needs it. Plus the wearer, that's the person that's wearing the other Spaulder, does not get affected by their own ring. So we want to make sure we get this in group, and uptime is awesome. So Way of Martial Knowledge, again, this is for boss fights. This is not a trash setup. Martial Knowledge and Zen are not really great for ad pulls because they're single target. And that's why I have the trash set up here with just regular Powerful Assault and Yandirs and Spaulder, so that we're make sure that we're hitting everything that we can with buffs. So we've got Zon, Spaulder, and then Way of Martial Knowledge. This comes from Craglorn. It's an overland set. All you have to do is get your stamina below 50% and then light attack. And then this will increase the damage of the enemy taken by 8%, and this can happen for 5 seconds. So you have a 3-second downtime. And so this is a unique debuff as well. That's a percentage buff that's going to really boost damage in your group as well. Again, this person can also wear War Machine if for some reason the fight lasts long enough to fire off another Slayer bomb, then you can fire that off. But the other thing that's packed into the Templar with the class mastery are these two things right here. The Bright Harbinger class mastery passive upgrades the Illuminate passive, which gives minor sorcery, which is a 10% increase to damage for your group. So that's baked into this. Remember, I said in the previous video, they moved Minor Brutality off of the Earthen Heart skill line and up to the Draconic Power. So that Minor Brutality buff may not be as prevalent as it used to be. If your tanks are not building into Draconic Power, you might not see that unless you have a pure Dragonknight like this. So support might see some more full-blown Templars to get advantage of this Bright Harbinger passive, which upgrades the Illuminate passive to a level 2. And in addition to the 10% damage increase that is given to your group, you also give them a unique 300 weapon and spell damage. Now, this is a passive that you get just for activating skills from the Dawn's Wrath skill line. It's not something that you have to upkeep. If you're just casting the Dawn's Wrath skills once every 20 seconds, this takes effect. It also gives the Templar person themselves 600 weapon and spell damage rather than just the 3. And so this is always up, doesn't rely on the ultimate like the other build does. The lead from the front is ultimate based, whereas this is just passively happening with being a full-blown Templar. So you could possibly, if you can get away with just running one War Machine, you could possibly put a Null Arca person here along with the Martial Knowledge just to keep their damage going up higher. It just depends. You're going to have to coordinate your DPS standing really close to this Dragonknight and keeping their healers a little bit further back so that that doesn't happen. But the second class mastery here is Judgment's Brand, and this upgrades Burning Light to increase your damage of the Burning Light from 625. It basically doubles it to 1250. If you don't know, Burning Light does a shit ton of damage passively when you just do damage. So this could really, really increase things quite a bit. And so that's the one thing I would say is maybe you don't run War Machine here. That's one flex. You could put the Null Arca set here and then still take advantage of all of this here. And so here is my healer, my main healer setup. All these sets are procced off of the same condition, overheals for the most part. Now, if you do actually just regularly heal somebody, Ozezans will give you the minor vitality buff instead of the armor buff. So keep that in mind. Spell Power Cure, when you overheal somebody, you give them major courage. And then Perfected Kyne's Wind. If you watched my previous video, I talked about the dummy buffs, Hircine's Veneer and the Worm's Raiment, and why those buffs could be handled differently because the sets that themselves are kind of weak in comparison to what others can do. This right here is a game changer for helping keeping your team topped off with resources. This really, really helps. Make sure you try this set out if you haven't done it. This really makes it so that people just don't run out of resources. It's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. With subclass builds, you don't have a healer skill line sitting there giving you a resource regeneration or an increase in resources. And so in a lot of cases, they kind of suffer with sustain. This is really important to consider. This is not the only sustain set that you can do. You could, if you don't have this one, Stone Talkers from Rock Grove is also a really good one. Then the new trial, Ossein Cage, has the synergy. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. However, I will say that one doesn't come around that often. You have to wait for the synergy to be able to give the resources. I like this one because it's active. Basically, it has a 6-second downtime, and then it's giving resources for 4 seconds. So it's on for 4 seconds, off for 6, on for 4, off for 6. This constantly is hitting. And it procs from the same condition of these other two over healing. So it's not like you've got to run a different mechanic in your setup. If you change this out and run Stone Talkers, now you have to heavy attack on your back bar every 10 seconds. Why does that sound familiar? Rojo. So then you're putting two Rojo setups if you're running Rojo on your other healer and you have Stone Talkers here. Now you have both of your both of your healers heavy attacking. It's just hectic. This right here just happens passively with what you're doing. It's so easy and so effective. This makes healing easy mode. Trust me, try it. It works. I've had amazing success with this setup. You'd be surprised at how much your team will improve when you give them resistances and resources and they stay alive and the trial just rips because there's no dead people. So the off healer setup that I have, the blind, this gives a massive amount of shield for a 2-piece set. All you have to do is critically heal. And then I have Xoryn's Masterpiece. Why do I have this? In my setup, with the critical damage cap being so easy and I'm taking out Warhorn, Warhorn gives you 10% resources for 30 seconds. And it has a drop-off potential. If you calculate 1667, I'll just pull up my calculator here on the screen. And we'll take 1667. Okay, and that's, let's say, we'll just take what's a normal DPS stamina, 32,000 roughly. Divide that by, or I should say, multiply it by 5%. 1,600, okay? So now you can see 1667 is essentially 5% of your max stats. So this is 5% of your max stats never dropping off, never, it even is persistent through death, never drops off. Everybody gets max magicka and max stamina in this amount. Why is this an awesome set? You don't have to do anything to proc this. It's completely 100% put it on and forget it. It makes your job easier as a healer. This right here, all you have to do is critically heal. This can happen a lot with several heal over times going, and then all you have to do is make sure you have your critical chance up on your healer, and this will happen more than you think. I've got a healer build that has a critical chance rating of in the neighborhood of 34%, and this pretty much keeps the shield up all the time. Now, if you by chance don't have somebody that has Velothi on, such as the support DPS here, then the shield, while it remains active, is also going to give that person minor force. So that's another gap closer there for that little bit here. A little small flexibility here. I recommend running Powerful Assault on the healer in most scenarios. However, if you're going for a hard mode where there's some extra damage being done in boss fights especially, I would highly recommend looking at a set like Combat Physician. This will give your team more shields along with the blind. This procs from the same condition that the blind does. Critically healing, shields on each target. Now this is the other thing. This is a per target, and this is a per target. Very, very important to make sure that if you're looking at sets to implement into your group, you look for this right here. If you're getting something that happens once every 5 seconds and it doesn't say per target, that means it's happening to one person in your group every 5 seconds, not your entire team. So you really need to pay attention to this right here. If you're not running a hard mode, you can probably get away with having your healer run Powerful Assault, put Echoing Vigor on your back bar, and that will work great. And then you can have one of your support DPS be a little bit more powerful with running a different setup for trash. But Bastion, as well as the Curative Runeforms skill line, collectively will increase the damage of the blind as well as combat physician by 25%. And so what we're going to do is look at the values here. When you're looking at the base value for blind and combat physician, they are listed as such here. And this is what actually you'll be giving your group if you set that up. So it's almost 9,000 shields there total, just about. That's a massive amount of shield to keep up just from one person. And so with Xoryn's, you're replacing Warhorn. With Warhorn, you get 10% max stats for 30 seconds. There is a drop-off risk. If two people simultaneously fire it off, you're going to have some wasted issue there. Not only that, but the ultimate costs 250, so it requires some management, and then coordination is also required. Someone always has to be ready to cast it when the buff drops off. If you have one person run Xoryn's, you get 5%, always active, never drops off. It's passive, 0 ultimates to be relied on, and if the person wearing this dies, as I said, it is persistent through death, just like Pearlescent Ward. So keep that in mind. It's a good set to use. It really is helpful. So tank setups, for trial setups, I would recommend Pearlescent Ward on your off tank and Lucent Echoes on your main. This gives your group a unique 180 weapon and spell damage. If somebody dies, everybody gets tankier with the damage reduction based on how many people are dead. And then with Lucent Echoes, this tops off your critical damage cap with just that 11% that's always active as long as your main tank is above 50% health. Really easy to sustain that. And then also run one piece of armor of the trainee and one piece of Druid's Braid on each of your tanks so that they get the extra max health here. Really awesome, about 2,660 or so extra max health, really helpful. So the two monster sets I like to run are Baron Zadras on the main and Lord Warden on the off tank. Why is that? There's another extra physical and spell resistance that you can add to help keep your team alive. If you implement all these sets that I'm talking about, your DPS are going to be running around at about 30,000 physical and spell resistance. That's almost at the level of a tank, but they're ripping damage while they do it. Easy to keep them alive if they got that much resistance. So the monster sets, Baron Zadras, why is this important? This allows your main tank to basically just generate a crazy amount of ultimate. And then if they've got Magma Shell on their back bar, this is an emergency button for themselves, and it also gives a shield to your group as well. But this will help keep your main tank alive. A little bit of a selfish set, but not so much if you're talking about keeping your tank alive. Very, very awesome set. I've done a video on this. I'll link the description. I'll just link my tank playlist because I've done videos on all of these sets pretty much. And so if you're curious on those, I will link my playlist in the description. But Glacial Guardian is a really cool set that you can run on your main tank. All you have to do is take damage on your back bar. You can bar swap and it puts a frost tether on the enemy. And this increases status effect chance to the main enemy by 200%, which is quite a bit. So just for giving you some reference, if you have a weapon glyph that normally procs every 20%, applying a status effect, you can triple that basically and make it a 60% number with just this gear piece. And then if you don't want to run the Winter's Embrace skill line, I hate it personally. I think it's terrible. then you can still give your entire group major resolve by running the Mighty Glacier gear set. I've done a video on this. I'll highlight that. But this is really, really easy to keep uptime. All you have to do is put this set on your back bar and you lay your wall of elements down, and voila, you've given your entire group major resolve. That simple. That gives you some build freedom to where you don't have to run the Winter's Embrace skill line. It's not that great of a tanking skill line, in my opinion. Just to run that major resolve buff. I agree, major resolve is absolutely vital and it's important. I just don't agree with having to run Winter's Embrace. With the implementation of subclassing, it is more powerful to build with certain skill lines than it is to focus on gear sets. Gear sets have been in the game since the start. Subclassing is brand new, and it has been shown to be the most powerful power creep in the game's history. Go with your skill lines first, add in your buffs later. So buffs beyond the trial dummy that you can implement with this setup. Spaulder of Ruin, 260 weapon and spell damage. Powerful Assault, 307. These are not present on the dummy. 180 weapon and spell damage from Pearlescent Ward on the off tank, not on the trial dummy. Bright Harbinger, this is the class mastery from Templar. A unique 300 weapon and spell damage. In case you're going to say, that's not worth it, just about what Powerful Assault gives you. Right there. So you can stack all of this. These are all just weapon and spell damage. These all stack. So then we have the Standard of Might. When it is active, 300 weapon and spell damage here. Zen's Redress, a 5% damage increase. Martial Knowledge, 8%. All of this is not present on the dummy. We have Xoryn's. Now, we're only getting 5% here, but there's no drop-off. Ozezan's, we have 4,272 armor. I'm assuming that we're just going to be overhealing. If we're not, we're getting minor vitality, which is a great buff to have in and of itself. And then we have damage shields. Okay? And so the bottom line is when every player builds and plays their role like this, everything becomes easier. If you're paying attention to the gear sets that I talked about, these all just happen passively. You don't have to do a specific mechanic such as heavy attack on your back bar, bash, anything. All of these gear sets activate just by playing your build. And that's why this is simple and it synergizes all together very well. You've got your penetration handled, your critical damage handled, your resistances are sky high on your DPS, 30,000 physical spell resistances. Good luck killing them. You've got resources coming from Kyne's Wind and Xoryn's Masterpiece, and then you don't have the fumbling Warhorn bullshit. You can now use Standard of Might. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention it, but I will now. When you take Warhorn away from your healers, now you can implement the absolute massive weapon of Glyphic of the Tides, which is another 200 weapon and spell damage that I haven't even touched on here. Now, because why am I talking about this? In the realm of subclassing, damage has gone up exponentially. And why is that important to pay attention to? When somebody dies, they are likely doing somewhere in the neighborhood of 130,000 DPS with all of these buffs implemented. Okay, so that's 130,000 damage per second on the floor. It roughly takes 6 seconds to resurrect somebody. So what you're going to have to do is take another 130,000 damage per second DPS. That equates to 260,000 damage on the shelf. So we're just going to do that really quickly here. So if we have 260,000 per second, and it takes 6 seconds, that's 1.5 million DPS. That's if you get on the resurrection right away, and it happens without interrupts, or having to move out of an AoE that lands on you because you're trying to res. Although you can move while you're resing now in update 49. But that's just a long way to say, if we can prevent the deaths in the first place by giving resistances, shields, and all these other buffs, you're going to rip through the trial. There's no more burst windows. Your entire trial is a burst. So you can disagree with me if you want. This is just a suggestion, just to give you an outline of how to build and synergize your entire team. There is a lot of buffs that you can implement into your trial team now that we are in the subclassing world, where DPS come dressed with this type of setup here. This right here, 7,200 penetration before subclassing, was pretty unheard of for the most part. Or I should say even before Arcanist and Velothi. And I think a lot of people who played this game before then are still kind of stuck in bringing stuff like Alkosh. When you're running this on a DPS, you don't need Alkosh. It's overkill. Alkosh is not useful at all. You're already at this on a DPS just from Velothi and an Arcanist. That's it. It doesn't even have to be a subclass of any kind. If you use Herald of the Tome and Velothi, there you go. Stuff like Yolnahkrin, that's not really useful anymore because of subclassing, or say scribing and Arcanist. That you just need to modernize how you look at buffs, where to get them, and how to implement them into your team. So this was just kind of a write-up on how you can kind of run a little bit more of a unique setup to try and push your team for staying alive, and also including a massive amount of buffs without losing out on something. So I just wanted to do kind of a trials team write up on this to kind of encapsulate everything and what you can take advantage of when you have a team of DPS that are running the meta beam build, and where you can go with that. So before I close out the video here, I'm going to do something that I did in my last video. I'm going to preview some music that I have put out. So what we're going to do in this one, I'm going to showcase my faction songs that I did for the night market. That was a requested thing that I got from a couple of people. So I just wanted to cover the night market songs in case somebody hasn't heard them or given them a try. I will play the shorts for those to close out the video, but before I do, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. If you go to my YouTube channel, just like this, if you go down to my created playlist, just like this, this is where all of my organized content is. I've got several folders in here, a beginners list, an add-ons folder. I've got DPS here, regular guides, healers, tanks, all kinds of stuff. But that's where you go if you just want to go to the playlist folder, just like that. But I'm going to close out the video. We're going to play the 3 quick clips for the different factions. We're going to start off with the Ruckus, then I'll go into Thousand Eyes, and then we'll close out with the Glittering Goad song. So I will play the short in there. If you like those, check them out on my YouTube channel. All you have to do is go to the playlist here, go to the Songs of Tamriel. I will link this playlist in the description if you'd rather just click on the description there and find it. That's where you find all of my music, but I'm just going to showcase some different things. In the previous video, I showcased all of these, and I did make an error. There is a video coming out this Friday. It is about Thurvoken and the Fanglair dungeon. So that video will be coming out this Friday, and then the following Friday is when all of these start to come out in every Friday, basically going forward. But here is the faction songs, starting off with the Ruckus, then the Thousand Eyes, and Glittering Gold. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.
Squalls are rising, the district's burning darkest don't surrender. We're taking back our ground. Moonlight, thunder in the starlit plaza. Moonlight, the strongest one alive. Moonlight, you wanna do business here? You pay the ruckus, or you don't survive. Or you don't survive. We are watching in the corner of your eye. We are watching every deal and every lie. We are watching in the shadows of this place, 1,000 eyes on every single face. Glittering gold, we run this place. Gold on the floor, gold on my face. Every round, beyond far grave, I've already sold. Bastion don't hustle. Da da dun dun, da da dun dun, da da dun. Bastion just holds. Da da dun dun, da da dun dun, yeah dun. Glittering gold, we run this place. Gold on the floor, gold on my face. Every round, beyond far grave, I've already sold. Bastion don't hustle. Da da dun dun, da da dun dun, da da dun. Bastion just holds. Da da dun dun, da da dun dun,